Hello Curious and welcome back. Sometimes we say that we will not believe something until we see it. But eyesight can also be unreliable because in fact, the eyes are only transmitters and the image is interpreted by the brain. So if we are dealing with an optical illusion, are we fooling our eyes or our mind? What is an optical illusion anyway? What are the most popular and spectacular examples in this field? And can any of us be fooled? Stay tuned until the end of our very unusual episode, but before we move on, don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notifications so that you don't miss any of our upcoming episodes. Many of us have probably wondered while watching movies, how is it possible that in the mirror, when the character is looking back, you can see the actor, but not the film crew? Or was Buster Keaton hanging on the clock really that high above the ground? Well, nowadays anything can be shown with an effect created in a computer, but many of the magic tricks used on film sets originated from an understanding of perspective and optical illusions. To begin with, an optical illusion is simply a misinterpretation of an image by the brain resulting from changes in contrast, shadows, and colours that introduce differences in our thinking and association of facts. What we perceive is highly subjective and depends on many factors. Often identical sizes or colours can appear different to different people. Let's look into this a little further. We can divide optical illusions into two categories. The first is when the error occurs before the image reaches the retina, and is most often explained by the laws of physics. In this case, perception is influenced by, for example, temperature, angle of refraction, etc. And an example would be Fata Morgana, which is a mirage seen in the air in a very hot desert or conditions. The second category is visual illusions, which consist of images that have been mistakenly processed by ourselves and are most often due to incomplete information held by the brain. To keep things simple, that's not all. Scientists have been interested in the phenomenon of optical illusions for hundreds of years, and some examples even date back to the early 19th century. Hence, specialists have divided optical illusions into even more specific groups. We have iridation, which is the incorrect assessment of the size of a given object, geometrical illusion, in which shapes, angles, distances are wrongly perceived. There are illusions of brightness and colour, impossible figures, that is three-dimensional objects on a flat background that only appear to be three-dimensional. And the last category is ambiguous figures, in which the image, the figure and or the scene at each glance seem to be different, although it does not change in the retina. But instead of further pestering you with theories and explanations, it's better to learn about the most spectacular and best optical illusions. Is your eyesight and mind susceptible to such things? Let's see. To begin with, we have the famous Hermann's grid. Looking at this picture, do you see dots between the squares? Sure, we do too, although in reality, they are not there. This illusion dates back to the beginning of the 19th century, and the effect of the appearance and disappearance of the dots is a result of peripheral inhibition, i.e. a disturbance in the perception of light resulting from an even distribution of receptors on the retina of our eye. Now, before you is Poggendorff's illusion. We bet that looking at this picture you are convinced that the black and blue lines are connected. But as it will turn out, this is just an illusion. This illusion was named after German physicist Johann Poggendorff, who described it in 1860, and it still stirs the imagination today as experts still argue about its explanation. Some point to studies that have shown that the effect is influenced by observers' perception of acute angles as more obtuse than they actually are. Others believe that the brain misinterprets 2D images using principles applied to 3D images. Do you know how to explain it? Here before you is another example of an optical illusion. Sure enough, in this picture, you see a white triangle in the middle. Of course, it is not there at all. The illusion popularized by psychologist Gaetano Kansas proves that the brain looks for and creates clues even when they are not there. Our perception is based on experience, not on visual stimulus, because it is the arrangement of models that gives us the illusion of a triangle. Now sit comfortably and stare at the point in the middle of the picture for 10 seconds without blinking. Do you notice anything unusual? The image is blurring and the blue dots have disappeared. This is just one example of the Troxler effect discovered in 1804 by the Swiss physicist of that name. It involves the brain that stops responding to stimuli that are not changing and literally erasing the above image from consciousness. If you want to see it in another picture, here you go. If your head doesn't hurt yet, here are some more examples of surprising and amazing optical illusions. As we mentioned earlier, the phenomenon of illusions is still being investigated by scientists. It so happens that there is even a Neural Correlate Society, NCS for short, and it is a non-profit organization that promotes scientific research into the neural correlations of perception and cognition. It supports researchers, ophthalmologists, neurologists, and artists exploring the attitudes of illusory perception and the medical advances it underlies. This association holds an annual competition for the best illusion, and you will now see examples of the finalists. Are modern concepts more spectacular than their predecessors? Let's start with the third place from 2020 by Daniel Marleveld from the Netherlands. His project is called Impossible Grid Typography, and the illusion makes the shapes seem three-dimensional. The top can be the bottom, the back can be the front. It also appears that parts of the letters rotate in different directions. Do you see this? Now before you is Matt Pritchard's project from the UK titled The Real Thing, which took second place in 2020. It is an illusion of the reflection of an object in a mirror. Seeing a dry object through an empty frame gives us the impression that we are watching its mirror image. Even when the scenery is simplified and stripped of deceptive elements, the viewer still has the impression of an illusion. Interestingly, it is still unclear why our perception assumes the initial assumption of the mirror despite the changes in the scene. In 2020, however, the first place in the competition went to Kokichi Sugira from Japan for his 3D Schrodinger's staircase. In a 2D case, the image followed for the perception of the staircase from above and below, while the second interpretation occurred when the image was turned upside down. In a 3D version, both interpretations are for the staircase seen from above, and one vision becomes the other when you rotate the object 180 degrees around the vertical axis. Amazing, right? If you like it as much as we do, you have to see last year's top 3. In 2021, the podium was closed by Dawei Bai and Brent Strickland's project from France, titled The Double Ring Illusion. Here in front of us are two circles that when far apart appear to rotate 360 degrees. But when these two circles are brought closer together, they seem to rotate only 180 degrees, bouncing back and forth as if they're avoiding colliding with each other. On the other hand, when one of the circles is broken enough for the other to pass through its holes, they appear again to rotate 360 degrees. Of course, in all cases, the motion is the same, only our brain interprets their rotation depending on whether they can intersect or not. Second place in 2021 went to Michael A. Cohen for the changing room illusion. Take a close look at this room for about 25 seconds. Do you notice anything unusual about it? Well, several items in the room have either disappeared, been repositioned, or added. It turns out that the changes made gradually are imperceptible to the surroundings. The illusion emphasizes that the brain perceives and remembers the world differently, more than we realize. And now it's time for the winner of the 2021 contest. It's the aforementioned Matt Pritchard from the UK and his design, the Phantom Queen. Here is a checkerboard and its reflection in the mirror. Interestingly, the mirror shows the White Queen, while the board appears to be empty where the pawn stands. It turns out that there is a hidden wall on the chessboard, which at a certain angle is invisible to the viewer, giving the illusion of the board's flatness. The project comprehensively explains how such camouflage works. So tell us, curious, which of these examples appeal to you the most? Do you like such magic tricks? Maybe you know other examples of cool illusions? Let us know in the comments below, and as always, don't forget to like, share and subscribe to our channel. Until next time.